Please welcome to the Imus Morning program, Peter Kiernan. Good morning, Mr. Kiernan.
Great to be with you again.
How are you?
Wonderful, thanks. How are you today?
Well,
never better.
how are your feet?
I'm all right. So what are you thinking about this morning?
My eyes are on Britain today.
Tell me about it.
Well, for a long time, we had a Game of Thrones in Europe, right? You love history. And they couldn't get along, border wars. And then we created something called the European Union. And that's grown to be 28 countries, 500 million people, huge market. And for the first time, you're starting to see Europe regain its composure and its ability to compete on a global scale. And now Britain, on Thursday, is going to decide whether they stay or remain, as they call it over there, or leave the European Union. And there are people who may not think that's a big deal to us, but it is.
Why is it?
Well, 20% of our exports, there are people who always start on the business side. 20% of our exports go to the European Union. So that's a big deal, and probably 20% of that amount goes to Britain. But I step back and look at the broader picture. Every time Europe got into a big falderall, a big fuss, the United States had to come in and get involved somewhere. Whether it was NATO, World War II, World War I, you get the picture that when Europe goes akimbo, when they start to fight internecine, somehow the United States always gets drawn in with money, with defense spending, with advisory. And so we should care as Americans whether Britain stays or goes because we want a healthy EU. That's good for us. It's a big market, but more important, it's another kind of instability that ultimately draws us in when we don't want to be drawn in necessarily.
How's the vote expected to go?
Honest to God, Oscar Wilde once said Britain has 42 religions and 2 sauces, right? I mean, it's not a place of passion, but you cannot believe the passionate divide, and it is too close to call. The last surveys I've seen said 44% stay, 44% go, with a huge number of undecided. And the people who want to stay have really good reasons, among the ones I just mentioned, but the people who want to leave have good reasons too. The reasons they want to leave are the way the EU works is that bureaucrats in Brussels decide a lot of things. They decide how many Syrian refugees are going to come into Britain. They decide whether Turkey can be a member of the European Union. If Turkey is a member, they get passportless entry, visa-less entry into Britain. And so there are a lot of things having to do with the state of Britain that are being decided by someone who is not elected, who is sitting in office somewhere in Brussels, Belgium. And if you're Britain, you may not like that. You kind of, we got the Magna Carta. We have universities that are 1,000 years old. We've been doing just fine on our own. And so there are a lot of people who say, let's have Britain just be Britain. And therein lies the debate.
I'm ashamed, not ashamed, but it doesn't please me in my own self-image to reveal to you that as you're talking, I'm having to force myself to listen.
Oh, no.
Oh, that's terrible.
And it's nothing to do with you. We obviously like you because we invite you on all the time, but...
Yeah, I get that. In fact, that's you could be a lot more interested in what's going on in Orlando. You could be a lot more interested in what's going on in the Trump campaign easily. So what I want to do is be your sentinel. I want to sort of say what's going on over there is important to you, and it's important to you because if for some reason the EU falls apart, we, the American people, which means you and me, are going to have to spend a lot more money, a lot more treasure, time, and maybe some of our blood to try and put Europe back together. Every time they get into a big problem, we get called in to help. And so I think we should care because if EU holds together, that's good for us economically. If EU holds together, it's good for us in terms of whether our army has to mobilize there or whether we can focus on other parts of the planet. So I get it. I really do. What goes on in Britain is not that compelling, except this relates to us. It honestly does.
This woman was a member of Parliament who was murdered. She was murdered apparently by a pro-leave whack job. Is that the deal?
It is, and this is a sickening one. If you know people like this woman, she was a member of Parliament for literally a year. Her 42nd birthday is tomorrow. She was a very cool person. She lived on a boat with her family and floating in the Thames. She was just one of those cool people. She represented a district that had a lot of old line, many generation British citizens, and then a huge and important immigrant population. And she managed to cater to both. Shooting her down, when you get a standard bearer who is sort of an innocent, who's just carrying the flag, and she gets gunned down in cold blood, everybody on both sides of this equation sort of came to an abrupt halt because the campaigning there is ugly. There are campaign posters that'll show somebody with a C, a long line of dark-skinned immigrants saying, a bridge too far, the breaking point. And it's the ugliest side of the immigration discussion. And here's this innocent woman who gets gunned down in cold blood. And her assistant, who happens to be an Indian, says, please get up, please get up. And her last words were, my pain is too great. And that caused everybody to stop all the campaigning for 3 days. It literally shut the whole thing down because this innocent woman was brought to her death, a mother of two, I think they're 3 and 5. And everyone said, maybe we've taken this to a place that's too ugly. I think it's going to have an effect on the outcome of the vote, personally, because it was so shocking.
You know what you did? You got me to listen.
Wow.
And care about this. That's really fascinating. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Iman.
I appreciate it very much. Peter Kiernan here in the Imus Morning Program. He's written a number of best-selling books, Becoming China's Bitch, American Mojo. Check him out. 11 minutes now till the hour.